Yo, hello, our second week of Pokemon Champions has concluded, and we got to see our biggest tournament so far, and a bit of a prelude until the big 10K player tournament next week in the Victory Road Champions Arena. This is a paid entry tournament, had 1,000 players, pretty decent prize pool, like you see 3K for first, and showed some interesting mods. As you see, there's a lot of Charizards, but this is second place is a Charizard Mega X. Seventh is Charizard Mega X2. And we also see something interesting as well, that Mega Floette did not crack top 8, while Megadium Mega did instead. And we get to see our first hard Trick Room concept really make it. We get to see Hydreigon and Sand, which hasn't really popped up quite as much. And yeah, let's just get right into talking about it. Our first team is this Charizard Mega Y plus Garchomp, Sneasler, and Cinvinu. That's something we have seen this forever, right? But the unique twist to this one is that it's using Milotic with the Coil Hypnosis set, and the reason for this is quite simple. Milotic, this conveys it's harder to bring in Incin. Incin, really, this is a very annoying Pokemon for Charizard, but with Milotic ability to get competitive, it's pretty strong. And you try to bring Incin Garchomp, a normal mode that would stuff out Charizard, then Milotic is really good into it. And a benefit to having the coil set as well is it gives your Milotic something unique on the field to do while it's stuck in Charizard's Sun. The other set is Scald, Icy Wind, Recover, but the problem with that set when you're using it next to Charizard Y, you're not actually putting on active pressure, so your opponent's very much still able to just keep Incin rotating in and feel kind of fine with it. But with the Coil Hypnosis set, because it's just coiling, at a certain point, with all the defense boosts, the opposing Incin, the opposing Garchomp, stop becoming meaningful, and then you can start clicking a move like Hypnosis, and that can take over the game for Charizard, and then this allow it to win scenarios, or normally this kind of struggles a bit and has to wait around. Milotic this acts as a very efficient physical wall against Garchomp. It makes it very, very scary to deal with. And we do have the Pokepaste to this too. So if you want to use this team, the rental code's right here, and you can play it in game immediately. It'll do you very well. I think this, needless to say, Zard, Venu, Incin, very strong. The Milotic tech covers matchups, and then you have the bulky Garchomp as per usual. This balanced it out quite well. That's it for the first place team. But what we talked about earlier, right, is that we got to see Charizard X as the second Pokemon with the runner-up position. And this team is kind of similar in conceptuality to it, but the main pro of it is just oh, now you're able to take more advantage of your Milotic, and you're able to play through a much more annoying win condition, as Charizard X's typing allows it to really stand up into a lot of the meta. It's very, funny enough, it's actually quite strong into the normal Charizard Y team, as Charizard X is able to be a Fire Dragon type, and you're quad resistant to it, and you're kind of fine as a result. As Sneasler to coaching, as Incin rotation, Sinistcha to give it more healing and sustainability, as Charizard X does have one vulnerability where it sometimes just KOs itself if you're not rotating correctly on the field. And having the Charizard X with the incredible power of Tough Claw's Dragon Claw and Tough Claw's Flare Blitz, you need some way to keep it on the field and keep it going. Mega Tyranitar is the secondary Mega option, because this team does have a very big problem, where if it deals with opposing weather, its damage output's going to be cut quite considerably, especially dealing with rain and dealing with weathers like opposing sand can be quite difficult. So Tyranitar Mega kind of equals the field a little bit into those matchups. There's some other teams and ideas with it too, where you can do Ninetales for a similar idea and more punish rain off of moves like Freeze Dry, which I think are quite interesting. And yeah, this one's using a more standardized Milotic set, because it doesn't get punished. Or if this were a Charizard Y, for example, and Tyranitar or Garchomp, Milotic gets more punish existing, because its only clickable move becomes Icy Wind, which is not very great, right? Icy Wind can have Pressure versus Garchomp, but the Scald and its actual damage output, this doesn't exist into a more neutral matchup. So it kind of just sits on the field. But with Zard X, one of the benefits there is that you're not setting Sun, so you're not hampering your own Milotic. Therefore, your Milotic's going to be like a little more effective on the field. And it can still like act as a little win con, and it's more important. Like, you'll see this with Zard X teams. They kind of just have to run Milotic, or they have to run like King Gambit. As Incineroar kind of just owns them. Because if this intimidates, it takes the Flare Blitz perfectly fine. You can Party Shot on Zard X. But Milotic is quite necessary to make sure the comp actually functions really well. And Sneasler is a nice addition to like CC into Instant, plus like the White Herb to prevent the worst case scenario, and also has coaching to make Zardex a little more stronger on the field. Overall, pretty good. And we see for the third place team, this is another concept we'll get into a little bit, where it's like offensive Fur Giraffe and using Fur Giraffe to neutralize Fake Out and have Zardex do more constant, consistent damage as a more aggro setting. Because not X, but Zard Y has a lot of base power damage. So if you can just prevent Fake Out from it in this quick heat waves, is this generally going to be pretty strong. That's another team to talk about too, is we got to see Sand get into top 4, and it's like pure Sand. Escadrille Sand. And Escadrille Sand is quite cool because you just have like Iron Head, you have EQ Rock Slide, your coverage is very good into the metagame. You're not as bulky as a Garchomp, and you don't have like cheese like a Garchomp does. But because of this having Iron Head and big steel damage, you're able to like really stand up into mons like Floette pretty well, which is kind of necessary when you're running a mon like Hydreigon, and your sole mega is a Tyranitar. You see another thing too about this Corviknight set is running Bulk Up Reef's Tailwind. And it's just saying, yeah, I'm just going to quick Brave Bird, get bulky, and I'm going to win con. Which is quite effective. Scarf Hydreigon is kind of an anti to Garchomp for this team, while also trying to anti more annoying Pokemon like Aegislash, Scizor, which Scizor is actually quite a strong Pokemon into this team otherwise, as it can just kind of sit on a lot of the Pokemon here. And also Hydreigon, this has a good typing into Charizard Y, where someone has an offensive advantage with Charizard Y Garchomp. Hydreigon kind of neutralizes that quite a little bit. If you see like a side spam team with Torkoal too, Hydreigon's will resist. Hydreigon is also good into like the Mega Blastoise that has come up a bit more, where it can just like Water Spout. You're able to just like Dark Pulse Draco and this. Your Water Resist, you're chill. Rotom Wash is kind of like the neutral Pokemon that's just really good into a large amount of the matchups that we have going on currently. If you look at the top cut field, and this is really what makes Rotom so good, is the Fire type, Fire type, Fire type. This is the Ground type, so it's immune to the with Levitate. And you take Dire Claw CCs, you take the instant moves, you take the Milotic fine too. And the amount of Grass types in this top cut. There's Charizard's using Solar Beam, which with Tyranitar, that takes away the Solar Beam pretty well. And there's a Venusaur, who has the Energy Ball, but not many Grass types. So Rotom is generally just getting a decent matchup, because like Sinistcha functionally does no damage. It's not a high output threat. And the Meganium's like the one thing that really consistently this OHKO's Rotom Wash in this top cut. So this is quite a good Pokemon. quite a good Pokemon. This is the Charizard X rental. We'll put it in the description of the video too if you want to get another look at it as well. And once again, this like very bulky, good setup with Zardex. Coaching is quite strong. It's a little greedy, the Sneasler is, but if you run a bulkier Sneasler and you run like coaching, it's quite annoying. I think something that hasn't like set on yet as much as it should is you can just go like really bulky on Sneasler and then just have it help your team set up and use it for its offensive capabilities, or at least the threat of its offensive capabilities. Because if your Sneasler is able to live a good amount of hits on the field and stay on the field, then it's able to be more threatening than this necessarily it's doing the damage, which is something more players have come to realize as we have kept going. And this is the Side Spam team to talk about as well. You'll see this on ladder. But it's not really side spam, but this is a hard Trick Room team. Where it's like instant, you quick Trick Room, and all of a sudden you get big sweeps going. And the funny thing about this too, is that if you're in Sun, Charizard in non-Mega will do more damage with like Heat Wave Overheat. And then it can Mega to like reset Sun sometimes. I do feel like with these teams that Zard is probably the least necessary part. You could probably even run them on like Skull Villain, just to be able to like guarantee your Trick Room a little bit better, or some other interesting set. You see the Swords Dance too, so if someone tries to like stall out Trick Room and you're on the last turn, you can quick Swords Dance. And then the stall outing Trick Room, this has less value. You just have like so much pure damage with this that if you just don't have a good matchup, and a lot of players aren't really expecting people to go hard TR because a mono like DD doesn't exist. So the matchup preparation to go against this team, this is not as strong as it usually is. And it gives you a very, very big opener. Just quick your attacks and quick them really, really strong, you know? And here's a rental for this too, of course. You want to take a look at it. You want to take a look at it and use it on the ladder yourself. This will be a very easy team to get a feel for the game. As you just have 2 Trick Room mods, you set up Fake Out, and you just sweep with Torkoal. Quite simple. One important thing to note for when you do actually play this though, or play versus it, Hatterene as a Trick Room setter has the ability Magic Bounce, which is generally good because you stop a lot of setup, right? But the really bad thing about it is your Hatterene can get Parting Shouted, and then it'll just switch out. Your Hatterene will switch out, the instant will not, and then your Trick Room is prevented. So that's an important thing to keep note of too. And this team does also use close combat because there's one very bad matchup. Tyranitar is really bad for you at times. So having CC does take care of a Tyranitar, and he is even running White Herb to make sure very well that he is taking care of a Tyranitar sometimes, which is quite funny to me. But strong performance, very strong performance. And this, some quick fire. We have some other rentals. I'll put these in the description. This one's kind of a Floette team, but it's bluffing with Gardevoir instead. I think you'll get a similar result playing this if you played Floette. But the cool thing about Gardevoir is also has Psychic coverage, and it has Trick Room itself, so it's a little better into Mega Gengar. It's able to Psychic the Mega Gengar. So there is a catch that allows Gardevoir to be better than Floette, but Floette is still very good. Floette is still a very good Pokemon. And to talk about like one of the main Floette concepts, right? Floette Aerodactyl. That's 3 places, but we also see a Megadium use the concept as well. And the cool thing about Megadium, right, is it's in kind of this middle range, but it threatens like a lot of the Mega. What I talked about with Red and Wash, how there's no grass types. Megadium's a grass type. Basculegion, grass. Weather Ball into Frostlass can Gambit. Pretty good. A Solar Beam into Tyranitar in Sand to KO it. That's kind of cracked. Megadium has a lot of tools like that that allow it to be very, very playable. And we also see an interesting side of this team too, where it has like kind of this dual mode going on, because Megadium is a very middling speed Pokemon. So you can set in Tailwind and then use like Sneasler and use Megadium to just threaten things offensively and do a good enough job. And it has Fur Draft to act as a little bit of an anti, while also being a Trick Room mode into faster opposing teams. And using Kingambit with all 4 attacks actually is quite good, because like into a lot of like opposing Kingambits, for example, and opposing things, they kind of have to like move around what moves you have. Like if you don't have a Steel move and you go into Floette, you're in a lot of trouble. And if you don't have a fighting move and then you go into like Kingambit and they like start setting up on you next to a redirection, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble too. And it's scenarios like that where it makes just having all the attacks kind of interesting. Like even though we don't have an item like Assault Vest, which makes this kind of set better, the value of having every attack on field is kind of important at times. It is kind of important. It's not something you'll see very often, might I add, but it is something that nonetheless will be very relevant as you just keep playing the game, right? It will be very relevant. I do want to show off the Tinkaton team, because I did not pull this up myself. As you can see, that is Tinkaton. The cool thing about Tinkaton that's not really talked about, despite being an interesting Pokemon in itself. Tinkaton has like a very, 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 very unique thing to it, where it has the ability to this, like, it can fake out inner focus, so if you're going against for a draft, it can deal with it. But it's also this a steel type in a metagame that doesn't have very many fast steals. Like if you look at the steel types in the format, right? There's Corviknight, pretty strong, good flying type, but it's not doing anything to really help the team immediately, and can sometimes get like stagnated for pressure. And then there's like Scizor, who's a bullet punch bot, and is very weak to opposing fire types. And this, aside of the bullet punch, you're not getting much necessary value. But the interesting thing about Tinkaton here is like alongside the pressure of this having the Perish Trap and being able to like Encore Trap something in, Floette and in particular Aerodactyl do not really have good ways to like mediate this Pokemon. And then a fire type that would be like perfect to bring in into like Corviknight or Scizor, like if your opponent's using the Delphox or using like Charizard Dual Mega next to Floette, if they bring it versus Tinkaton, they kind of have to switch, because the Tinkaton's just going to fake you out, and then it'll be able to have the partner Garchomp be able to Rock Slide, and or have like the Gengar like trap you in and then deal with you that way. So there's a lot of layers that makes this team like quite interesting, and Tinkaton actually a good Pokemon. Like in particular next to like Scarf Chomp, right? Charizard Y, if it gets like trapped in versus Scarf Chomp with this Quickie Rock Slide, it's an easy way to eliminate it. And I'm on like Talonflame 2 and Aerodactyl. Those are two Pokemon that are very vulnerable to any of this offensive types in the game. So they can just be like left on field and then this KO'd by much faster aggressive contact. And that'll just immediately put your opponent so back, where in some cases this wouldn't be true otherwise. And another interesting thing, of course, the Fur Draft part. You can fake out a Fur Draft through its ability, and you get an extra time to deal damage to it in front of like instant Fur Draft, for example. And you can do something like, if your opponent's just like instant Fur Draft every game, I can lead like Tinkaton, I can rotate out my other Pokemon into Tyranitar, and then have Tyranitar click Crunch on Fur Draft and threaten and prevent the Trick Room. Because we see all that Fur Draft Torkoal team, right? They had Fur Draft, Hatterene, Instant, Torkoal. They would lead like Fur Draft and Incineroar into it. But you could also just bluff rotate into Tyranitar, use Crunch, and they have to immediately party shot you or CC on the prediction in order to actually get value. And you can also just return it by saying, I can fake out and have Gengar on the field, and then Gengar can like Sludge Bomb for me into the Fur Giraffe, and I can Gigaton Sludge Bomb next turn and get the Fur Giraffe out that way, and then have like Garchomp Como back and then be able to beat them regardless of the scenario. So it's a very interesting but effective way to get through a lot of pressure. As for other ones, we see like outside of the money, we see some Kangaskhan's. Kangaskhan Dual Mega is something that has popped up on ladder a little bit, with similar concepts as the first place one, where we just see like the Milotic, Kang. I think as you keep going, you're probably going to see the Coil set on these teams too, because I feel like Coil helps make Kangaskhan a little stronger, because Kangaskhan's kind of an enabling Mega to a sense, because it's a Mega that you click Fake Out with. So if you have Fake Out plus Setup next to it immediately, you're going to get more value out of your Kangaskhan, so I expect those to go to the Coil Hypnosis sets as well. And yeah, not the only Tinkaton in Top Cut. Well, it didn't make Top Cut, Edu didn't. But it's not the only Tinkaton here. And they see it again, like the Gigaton deal with the mirror, and then you have the double fake out to enable your setup instead. Or it's double fake out, then you have the Coal Mine Floette, and you should always get a decent option going. Rotom also has E-Webs for some speed control. And then you see Rock Tomb Garchomp. So there's a lot of ways to just get Floette above speed so it can actually start like getting lethal in the game. And this Garchomp also allows you to get around Wide Guard, which is not something that has popped up yet. We are not seeing a lot of Wide Guard users. But it is something to keep note. Wide Guard is a very good move. And we do have one here, Wide Guard Pelipper, but still not everywhere, and not into Charizards yet. They have not started teching Wide Guard yet. And yeah, I think that's good coverage for this tournament. See some funnier teams as we keep going. I'll link the full thing so you can see more of them yourself from this tournament in particular. And we go on to the next one. And this is Towns Flight Club. We're going to talk about some 100 player plus tournaments to get on their way first. This one had 100 players. This is a very simple Floette offense, but it's using Frostlass Dual Mega as an aside, so it can get a little more bulk on Mamoswine potentially, and allow Mamoswine as a Scarfer to act as kind of like an anti into Garchomp and an anti into Charizard simultaneously through Rock Slide. Because like what particularly makes Mamoswine an interesting pick is a lot of Frostlass teams are of course using Frostlass, Garchomp, Aerodactyl, but by using Mamoswine with like Icicle Spear, you can KO the Aerodactyl through Sash, you can KO a Sneasler through Sash if you get really lucky, you can KO Garchomp, so you actually deal with all of the things that would annoy Floette naturally. And here it's also used as a little bit of a extra mode as you have Frostlass plus Mamoswine. Mamoswine gets a defense boost. Mamoswine's Intimidate immune, so it can always get a strong attack off against a Incineroar composition. Overall, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Another thing to talk about among this top cut, I would say, would be Scizor getting a decent placement. Scizor is a Pokemon that is quite. This Swords Dance, you bullet punch, get kills, you know? Quite okay. But Alolan Ninetales as a Pokemon is being a functionally budget addition to what would cost a Mega Slot with Frostlash. And allows you to use mons like Basculegions, Wave Crash a little more efficiently. Like, even though this doesn't answer Charizard itself, this by having a Ninetales or another Weather Setter, this probably could also be a Tyranitar. But Ninetales in particular is good to like Garchomp as well, offensively. And can create some like pretty powerful setup scenarios. You can have the Wave Crash go in, KO the Zard when you switch in the Ninetales. Then you're cool. You're chill, right? You're very chill. You're very chill. So yeah, I feel like that's enough talking about this tournament, but we do see Mega Blastoise. But this one's using only Water Pulse as his attack, which I feel is a little weird. But yeah, is this strong Pokemon Floette? You see the Aegislash set? You'll see this set all the time. Poltergeist, very strong Pokemon move. You can't get rid of Mega Stones. Aegislash has a good matchup into Floette naturally. So you Poltergeist and you have like Shadow Sneak to pick up an attack and kill an Aerodactyl. For example, if they go to Sash, or like a Sneasler that gets like chipped heavily too. And we have the Brazil tournament where we see a complete sweep by Floette aggro. So if you thought Floette was dead, no, it's not. No, it's not. But this one's using Talonflame instead of Aerodactyl for the immediate Tailwind. So you can just Tailwind, get your Dazzle, and you have it first. You also have Dual Wing Beat, which this is a hack to this efficiently get rid of Sneasler. Like, your main threat, and you see with Aerodactyl too, where Aerodactyl doesn't have another coverage option, it doesn't have Brave Bird. Using Talonflame to use it instead of Brave Bird is just saying, I want the priority Tailwind, but I also just want to KO Sneasler. It's just so annoying. Talonflame's a simple but easy way to do that. This team's not much else to talk about here outside of that. It's using Roselli Garchomp to have a better scenario into the mirror matchup. And it's also using Gunk Shot, which the cool thing about Gunk Shot it allows bulky Sneasler. If you go like 32 defense, which is something that's popped up on Sneasler, that's to make sure they live like Garchomp hits and stuff that they really shouldn't be living. If you're doing that, you start getting to a scenario where you fail to KO Floette, though. That is the main problem with that set. By running Gunk Shot, you can kill Floette with a lot less investment. So running a really insanely bulky Sneasler sees more of the pros to it. And then also this is likely, because of the Citrus Berry, a very bulky Basculegion too. Last Respects is this an insane move. Your Basculegion is able to just take turns. It's probably just going to win the game. It's probably just going to win the game if someone can't trade it. Which is something we've seen more and more where some go to like bulkier Basculegions. This is a team worth talking about too in the second place slot. Because using Sableye as this a screen support set and kind of dual rain mode as well, because you can also set Rain Dance next to Archaludon. But the basic play with this, right, is you can lead like Basculegion plus Sableye, threaten like Wave Crash, and if you feel like your opponent's gonna go for a Volt Switch with like a Rotom, or go for like a decent neutral attack onto the Basculegion slot, right? You just hard out into Archaludon. Your Archaludon gets a stamina boost, and then next to Light Screen, Archaludon functionally has Assault Vest again, and it can start winning the game. It's very simple, but is a very strong duo comp, right? It is using Lumberry, which is interesting, but it's just an anti-delay sleep powder, so Sableye can keep clicking like Rain Dance into Charizard when it does Mega Evolve, while still being able to get up its Light Screen. So that's the reason for that tech, and that's enough for this tournament. Whoa. Whoa, that's a Zoroark. That is a Zoroark. We also see a Mega Lucario. Okay, so the thing about Zoroark, right? This Pokemon is kind of shit. It's kind of not very good. But because of how Illusion works, and it's a normal ghost type, it has a fighting immunity, it has a ghost immunity, it has a normal immunity, right? It can actually functionally put down a very good role because it's hard to ever consistently deal with Hisuian Zoroark as a threat, and it creates a very large doubt scenario, while also efficiently dealing with a lot of mega top tiers, right? Like, one of the scariest Pokemon in the metagame right now is Basculegion, with and a lot of people are running a Choice Scarf set. But a Choice Scarf Hisuian Zoroark is just faster than that, and it just KOs it with a Shadow Ball. And then Basculegion's no more, and you're chill. And then also, it has Icy Wind, so it's functionally acting as, like, similar to how we ran, like, Regieleki or, like, Fluttermane, without the support ability of Fluttermane, because, well, it's not possible, right? You actually have to trade the cost of running a Choice Scarf and Icy Wind for it. But fast speed control is something that's always very good in a dynamic speed environment, and especially next to a mono like Charizard, where the normal catch is that Zoroark is just going to Icy Wind, and if your Pokemon next to it can't get the KO, then you don't get value. Because of how this pure powerful a Charizard is, you're able to always be sure that you're probably going to get value. And aside from that alone, this team just has a lot of power options, like Sneasler can Gambit with Swords Dance. So if your opponent's not ready for the Zoroark, you know, like Zoroark bluffs that as the King Gambit, and then you try to fighting move it, that's kind of rough, buddy. That's really rough. And if it bluffs as a Charizard and they try to fake out it, oh, that's not good. And another interesting thing here too is this Garchomp's taking kind of like the other side of it, where it's a Dragon Fang Garchomp. A lot of Garchomps have been going like super bulky Citrus Berry, super bulky Lumberry, and is trying to beat opposing Garchomps by being bulkier than that Garchomp. Dragon Fang with the 1.2 times multiplier is kind of an anti to that, especially because like a Nerve Aerodactyl gets rid of the Hobomb Berry that has popped up a little bit too. So you can always be sure that your Garchomp will KO your opposing Garchomp, rather than the more atypical response, which has been make sure your Garchomp lives opposing Garchomp. So that is a cool tech. That is quite the cool tech. Now on to this tournament. We see Mega Manectric get a win. Wow. We did a video where I had a team of Mega Manectric 2. This it's a week or so ago on launch. And this is a pretty similar concept. Of course, the one I used had Snorlax and like Corviknight. It was a lot weaker in my opinion. My team was a lot weaker. It was obvious, but this is always going to be the kind of concept you see with Mega Manectric. The reason for that is quite simple. Similar to the past of how, like, Manectrix is to support Mega, right? Its main pro is its very, very prolific rotation ability. And a mono like Sinistcha, while it's not particularly the most amazing synergy with Manectric alone, being able to rotate allows you to buffer a lot of heals at, like, such high efficiency that it kind of just works out a lot of the time. Another team that I've been testing was, like, Skarmory over the Scizor slot here. And I'd use, like, Palafin. I feel like Palafin's just not a very good Pokemon, though. But the point is having a lot of rotational ability, and you can set up a Mon like a Scizor to actually just, like, keep healing. You have Garchomp with the Swords Dance for even more setup. Perimeter with the Calm Mind. And the normal ways to answer setup is you just kill them. You just kill the setup Mon, and then you're good. But if your setup Mon is just partnered by a lot of, like, anti-attacks, like Manectric has Snarl, it has Intimidate, and Snarl has Parting Shot and Intimidate too, so you can hamper someone on every side of the field. And then when they think they have enough damage, they think they're getting staying damage on you, right? Sinistcha rotates in, gets the Hospitality, and now that formerly damage that they had on isn't sticking on the field anymore, and then you should win the game with your setup Pokemon. That is something you're going to see with Mega Manectric. I think, like, almost any time you see a Mega Manectric team, it'll probably be running that kind of idea. I think that's all I really want to talk about for this one, but we'll just say, oh, there's a Mega Aggron. Mega Aggron's very simple. It just clicks Iron Defense, and then sometimes it wins. Sometimes it wins. But if you want to deal with Mega Aggron very simply, just please have a special attacking Pokemon, and then you probably will just beat it. You will probably beat it. And make sure you also don't die to it this Quickie Body Press. That would also help. We do see Hisuian Decidueye, which is pretty cool. Scrappy. Triple Arrow, Leaf Blade, Shadow Sneak. It has its decent offensive moves. Not crazy. It deals with, like, Gambit. It can hit a Ghost type with its fighting moves as well. Pretty cool. Pretty cool Pokemon. Not the most to talk about there, though. But yeah, we have another tournament. This is mainly French players. And France gets its victory with Charizard Y. I'm not going to cover it too much, but this one, unlike the other set, actually adapted and used Wide Guard. Because the main rock move in this format, right, is Rock Slide. Like, look, this is a Tyranitar. Shouldn't it beat a Charizard Y? Yeah, it should, right? They have Wide Guard. All their rock moves don't hit it. Now they have no super effective move onto Charizard anymore because Wide Guard exists. Como can't hit it either. It has Clanging Scales. They just get completely nullified. And what would be a good threat into Charizard becomes a not good threat into Charizard anymore during those turns. Interesting here too, we see Hard Trick Room with Crabominable. Using Mach Punch as well, Priority Anti as well. Pretty cool, pretty cool. And on to the next tournament. We see Mega Floette gets his win here today. But this one's a little not as typical to what we recognize to a normal Floette team. And they're using Sinistcha with Curse. Curse is a move that has a unique property when it's used by a Ghost type. When used by a Ghost type, it'll half the user's HP, and then it'll leave a permanent curse on your opponent, dealing, like, a lot of damage between turns. Interesting tech. I'm not sure if I get it. I'm not sure if I get it on this, but if you're in endgame and you get a curse on someone, you can just win the game off of it. So it does allow another way for like Sinisha to just die and not be bad on the field. Because opponents are generally going to look to target around Sinisha a little bit because like, oh, if he this quicks Rage Powder, right? Or if he doesn't quick Rage Powder, he switches in and he Curse. Stops a lot of win conditions that could potentially win. This is a very interesting tech. It's enough for this tournament. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have any pace that we can talk about. Oh, and we get a Perish Trap win, I believe. Yeah, this is Perish Trap, disable. Pretty simple. Is get your Perish up, sleep a little for a few turns, you win. See a little Perish Trap win. We see another Aggron team. Wow. Wow. And Glade. We'll cover the Glade real quick. Glade, I did not know Glade had triple axle. Wow. So the cool thing about Glade, even though its space ability is sharpness, not getting, even in spite of not getting sharpness, it still does a Pokemon that's fake out immune, and then in the back can kind of do a lot of damage because this has a lot of safety to it. There's not a way to like rotate through a Mega Glade's damage output, and the fact that it gets triple axle is pretty cool too, as it's able to this like get through a guard chomp a little bit for this team, for example. Like, you can see this by looking at this, right? This is a very guard chomp weak team, but because you have, like, inner focus and you Mega Vault, you have a better way to this, like, triple axle guarantee a KO on guard chomp, which is pretty cool. I don't know if that's a perfect lineup for it, but I am glad to see Mega Glade get a performance in regardless. I'm quite glad for that. And the last team I want to talk about, at least for now, is this triple mega team topped the ladder at like 2355 a bit earlier. And why I chose to like talk about this one is Scovillain is like a dual mega Pokemon. While it hasn't, as we saw, it hasn't really shown up in tournament yet, it is quite annoying. It is quite annoying at times. Because it can Mega to the burn, and if it doesn't, it can also just Rage Powder and die, and it's still a pretty good Pokemon, because it's just a Rage Powder bot. And Fire types are pretty unique in this format, so if you have a good Fairy Resist, being a Fire type, your Scovillain probably can sit on the field a little longer than someone would expect, allowing it to be quite interesting. But to talk about Pokemon for the future again, we said the same thing last week. I feel like it still has room to grow. Wide guard users, they're really good. You should be using wide guard users. Should be trying to. They're quite notable in how they just help a lot of teams in the format, because people feel like they are not getting punished for running sets like Garchomp, where they just run like Earthquake, Dragon Claw, and Rock Slide. And when that's the scenario, you really need to invest in wide guard users to a degree, especially when next to mons like Charizard, or as we saw this team that's out of Scovillain, they still felt comfortable where they can just use wide guard to gain value out of Aerodactyl and make a case that way, right? Other Pokemon to talk about really quickly. I feel like, weirdly enough, we're in a vacuum where in these dual mega concepts, like as much as I think Scovillain's very strong, I feel like if we're going to go down dual mega concepts, I feel like mons like Lucario alongside of it are actually like a little bit better. Because the interesting thing about Lucario is this: it can bullet punch an Aerodactyl, it can bullet punch a Meteor Mash Floette, his CCs is very strong, and you can put it next to Aerodactyl, and you can put it next to these mega concepts pretty well. Similarly, I do think a mega like Lopunny might be worth playing a bit more too, because like if we're using dual mega as a concept, Pokemon that do a lot of neutral traits, and maybe they aren't perfect in a lot of matchups, start getting a lot more value when you consider them that way. But to talk about another Pokemon I think is very underrated right now, and probably one I actually want to keep here, I think Blastoise, while simply a ladder demon Pokemon, Blastoise isn't dealing with a format using a lot of wide guard moves. So I think it's just worth mentioning here. Where if there's no wide guard and there's no ways to like anti this Pokemon, it's going to do a lot of this very powerful things. And similarly, I want to mention Serena. While priority isn't at like its highest, this being a mom that can use simple attacks like Drop Kick, Triple Axle, Taunt, Protect, it's generally this strong. It's one of the few grass type Pokemon that have a lot of like vertical presence, because you can use it next to a Talonflame comp like Talonflame Floette, and you can use Serena, or you can use it next to any comp that's like a little bit more weak to, like you can use it next to Blastoise, for example. Like this Water Spout set can just set up and win the game if it has a priority blocker, and then gives it a good way to just win a game, right? Gives it a good way to just win a game. As for other Pokemon next to it too, you can use stuff like Starmie, you can use stuff like Gengar. Just having a good priority blocker also helps them on like Basculegion. So Serena is just a Pokemon that's a little bit underrated right now. It's a very good anti to Garchomp and is one of the few grass type Pokemon in the metagame currently. So it has those advantages as such. And per that comment of Wide Guard users, Aegislash also gets Wide Guard. I still feel like Aegislash is like slightly underrated. But I think the main way Aegislash is underrated is I think this set is just very good. I think this set is very good. It's very annoying for Delphox to deal with a priority ghost type move. And using a mon with Aegislash, where this has like very good typing to Floette too. It can deal with a lot of like the anti-megas pretty well. And then by having the ghost rotation into like Pear Strap, and they can Shadow Sneak a Mega Gengar, pretty good Pokemon. And to more Floette answers, as we saw with Mikael Bester and Eduardo Cunha, this isn't quite a meme. I think it's actually vaguely relevant, because this is a Fairy Resist. It can quick Gigaton. It's quite okay. It's not a horrible Pokemon. Not a great Pokemon either, but it is one that goes in the range of, yeah, it's pretty decent. I feel like we have to say like Ninetales too is another Pokemon to watch. We've seen it pop up a little bit. These tools alone are the strong into this metagame. You can use it next to like Mega Gengar. You can use it next to Charizard X, which we saw Charizard Top Cut as well. But I think like Ninetales is a very good partner for it, as it can deal with opposing Garchomps better than a Tyranitar can. It allows you to play like a more solo Mega comp. And Ninetales, pretty good. Pretty good Pokemon. And then as for some other like low tier threats that are kind of edging toward viability, I feel like we haven't seen quite enough of... I feel like there's like this another set where we saw the Muddy Water Coil. I feel like there's a few other Pokemon where it's like vaguely good, like Sizzler is another steel type I think is quite underrated. I do think this having big skills in general is something that's still very of value. And then like even a mon like this, which is probably the craziest thing I will put here for a second, I think Skarmory Mega does have a little bit of viability right now. Like, I think this having big skill type attacking presences on field is just in general very good. I won't include them on the list, but those are two Pokemon that are kind of worth keeping in mind if you want to tech around them and build. Because it's going to be interesting. It's going to be quite the interesting mod. And yeah, I think that's all to really talk about for this week. Really the notable ones of this little box we did. I feel like Aegislash is just a really good set right now. I feel like Ninetales is a bit underrated, and I feel like Serena is quite underrated too. Aerodactyl, dual Mega Comps, and like Skullvillain, I think we'll include him here for this week, because he's popping up on ladder a lot. He's popping up on ladder. And you just use this set. You can run it next to like Aerodactyl. You can run it next to Farigiraf 2 and Trick Room. Like, we saw that hard Trick Room team. They could do it with Farigiraf, Skullville, and Torkoal instead of using Charizard. It would still probably be pretty good. And yeah, you can tech Leaf Storm, you can tech like Helping Hand, so it always will have some fundamental value to it. Overall, a pretty underrated Pokemon. And Leaf Storm just kills a water type sometimes too. Very, very underrated. We saw Wolf use it, and we saw this top ladder team as well. I won't normally talk about ladder teams in these videos, but I feel like the rise of Skullvillain is something that was only really reflected on ladder and hasn't reflected in tournaments yet, but probably will reflect in tournaments as we keep going, especially with that 10k tournament next week, so something to keep in mind. But that's it for this video. Later, see you next week, and hopefully we'll see some big revolutions with the 10k tournament we are getting, and we'll talk about that. Maybe its own exclusive video, because that's a 10k player tournament. We might have to do a very, very long talk on that one, you know? But yeah, deuces, bye-bye.